Hey guys, we're working on a Traxxas Revo 3.3, the Nitro version. I'm going to go over with you guys how to install a telemetry system. So let's start. First of all, in order to add the temperature sensor and the RPM and speedometer, you're going to need a flywheel with the magnet in it, part number 6542. You're going to need the RPM sensor, which is this wire here. The sensor is put into the bracket here. The sensor number is 6520. You're also going to need the bracket, the RPM bracket. That part number is 6536, and it comes with a bunch of different brackets. This is what the correct bracket looks like that goes in. The sensor pushes right into the bracket, and then there's a little Allen bolt right here that tightens up, that holds the sensor into the bracket. You're also going to need the temp sensor and voltmeter wire. This part number is 6521. Okay, and we're going to talk about where these plug in. RPM, the blue wire will go into the second plug on your receiver. The first plug is the VT, stands for vehicle temperature. That will be your gray wire. Gray wire will plug into the first connector. Now your red connector, you could plug it into your receiver, but I'm guessing that you'll only read 6 volts, and you'll pretty much always read 6 volts because I believe the receiver has a BEC built into it, which basically regulates the voltage to the receiver, and therefore you're not going to really read true battery voltage. So on the electronic versions, they don't plug that red wire into the receiver. They actually have an adapter that they plug in, which then plugs directly to the battery plug and gives you true battery voltage. Here's the plug. To the middle wire on these is always the voltage, and the corner wire is always black. If you had another wire here, it would be a sensor wire. The sensor wire always has a little groove on the end of the connector. Let's see, you can see it on this one here. You'll see that there's a little groove on the end of that connector. That's the side that always has a sensor wire. The middle wire is always the voltage wire, and the corner wire would always, or the bottom corner here would always be the black wire. So what you could do is just make a slight splice in the red, put a wire to it and solder to it, and then tape it, and you would be able to get true battery voltage. Like I said, if you just plugged into the receiver and it went through the receiver and back out this wire, you would probably not get true battery voltage. You would just get the voltage that's regulated to the receiver. So you really want to splice onto this red wire right here, or here, because this wire actually comes out on this side here. It's running down and it comes up right here. So you want to really truly splice right here on this side of the wire, or you could come into this plug here and you could splice into that with some solder. That would give you true battery voltage. What you do is you splice into that and then get a connector with a wire on it that will plug into this wire, and that will give you true battery voltage. So let's see, the blue wire, again, the blue wire is going to plug into the second connector here, the second one, and the top one here is going to be the gray wire. Okay, so that's where the wires go. Now let's talk about some of these other things that are going on here. Where does this bracket go with the wire? Okay, so here's your engine here, and it actually, you got to have on each side of the motor here, on each side of the motor you have 2 bolts on each side, one here, one here, that holds the motor to the motor mount. Just like on the other side of the motor, you have 2 bolts down here, one here and one over here down here. There's a bolt right here and a bolt right here. You're going to take those 2 bolts out, and you want the magnet or the pickup, they're going to actually call it a pickup, goes towards the flywheel. It's supposed to sit right over the top of the flywheel. So that's where that bracket goes, okay? And then you just want to run your wires neatly around behind the transmission and to your box. So with this sensor here, like I said, it'll just go onto those 2 bolts just like that, and it'll just go down, and you should be able to use the original stock bolts, because as you can see, this thing is very thin right there. So just take out those 2 bolts, put this in its place, route the wires, and put the blue wire where I told you guys. As far as the flywheel, this is the flywheel. If you look on the back of the flywheel, it actually has a little magnet there, and that magnet's what picks up on the pickup. So in my case, like I said, this is the original Evo 3.3, and so it does not have the magnet flywheel, so I'll have to add it to it. And I thought I'd show you guys how I got the motor out. It was very easy to do. First of all, the only thing I did was remove the 2 motor mount bolts on this side and on this side, and then the slide carburetor deal, I didn't have to even unbolt or do anything. I was able just to slide the motor, actually it's on this side, I was able just to tilt the motor and slide it forward and then slide it out. As you can see, I left the exhaust on. All I did was take the zip tie off for the rubber hose and then just slide it out, and so everything's still together. Okay, here's the new flywheel with the magnet. What we're going to do here is there's a C-clip right here. We're going to have to remove this C-clip. Be very careful not to lose it. So like hold your fingers over it, whatever you got to do to make sure that when you turn it out, you don't lose that C-clip. Here it is. So I was able to get it out. Now I'll be able to slide the clutch bell out. There's a washer on it. Don't lose that little washer. Okay, now my bearings look pretty hammered actually. I'll have to check those and see if I have any new ones. They actually spin freely. They look kind of rusty. I did buy this thing used and I've never had it apart. So you want to check all your bearings, make sure everything's okay. So you can see there's my bell. It said in the manual that the bell is supposed to be a 14 tooth, and I was just counting the teeth on it. Put a little white marker on it, that way I could count, and this one actually has 15 teeth on it. So either the original bell came with 15 or somebody's changed it. Now you have another bearing here you got to slide off. Again, this one's really dirty too. So what you might do is if they do spin freely, which these do seem to do, take a little WD-40 or maybe some bearing lube if you have some, and spray those and clean them out with a little maybe wire brush. Now here's my clutch. It's got a little spring load on it here, so you don't want to damage that when you're pulling these off. A lot of times you can just pry them. There you go. Pry it off with a screwdriver, and there it is. Set that down, and you have what's left is this nut here that you'll have to loosen. Once you get this nut off, the flywheel should slide off. So we'll have to get a tool to get that nut off. Alright, so it was actually pretty easy. I just took a pair of channel locks, stuck it on right here, and I broke it loose. It is lefty loosey, righty tighty. And I was able to loosen up the nut, get it off, and now this is supposed to come off, but it does have a collet on the back, which means when you tighten it, it centers it and it tightens it, so you might need to wiggle and loosen a little bit, and you might even need to tap it on the back. It's been on for a long time, so I don't know at this point. I'm going to, I don't want to damage it, so I'm going to go get a rubber mallet, see if I just tap on it real lightly on each side, if I can just get it to come off. Otherwise, I'll take a little WD-40 and I'll spray it down into that little area, and then still I may just tap on it a little bit. So, alright, I'll be back. What I did was I just took the back of this and I just tapped a little. I turned it and then I tapped a little and it came off. You don't want to hammer on it because you definitely don't want to bend your shaft or anything like that. As you can see, I do see some oil coming from there. So I want to make sure. I believe it's just a bearing there. I don't think there's seals, let's see. But if it is seals, well, that could be a problem. I think it's just a bearing that has its own seal. built into it. So I may need to replace that bearing. This motor's pretty old. Been sitting around a while. Let's look at it. Clean around here a little bit. I don't see any real grooves in it anywhere. So, you know, these motors are messy. You always have oil everywhere. But I did notice my OS doesn't have oil all over it like this one. The motor runs great, so I may have to rebuild it soon. But for now, just for this video, we'll continue on with what we're doing here. And as you can see, I'm just cleaning it really good. It's got a collet on it. That's this piece here. You could replace it if you wanted to. I really don't see any point in it. So I'm just going to clean everything really, really good. I'll put my new flywheel back on and put it all back together. So the new flywheel, there is no right or wrong way to put it on. Just put it on just like that, as you can see. Yeah, that's the magnet, that little piece there. Anyway, it just goes on like that after you've cleaned it really good. I'll clean the nut. I don't want to end up with any extra oils or things like that that I'm not supposed to have in there. Go ahead and tighten this up. Again, I'm going to rotate this a few times just because the nut's sitting on it and I can feel it snugging up a little bit to make sure it's going in there good. Then I'm going to take my wrench here. I'm going to hold this and tighten it. And then you can take your channel locks again here. Remember, you don't want to knock this thing out of balance or anything like that, so try not to put any deep grooves in it or anything like that when you're doing it. Once you got it tight, make sure that it's doing what you expected it to do. Take the spring off. Oops. There we go. The spring's got a little hook on it, so I'll go ahead and put these back on like this and like this. And then the spring, like I said, it has little hooks on it, so try not to damage anything, and they just hook together like that. So quite dusty. This thing is old. I might just hook these together like we talked about, and then I'll just go ahead and start hook it together, and then just start working it around and just pop right in like that. So there you go. Now it's ready. Now if you wanted to clean the outsides, you could clean the surface a little bit. Clean the inside of your bell just to get the dust out. Remember, you got bearings here we talked about. I'm going to clean them, and I'm going to probably get some bearing lube, which I think I have some. You don't want to get any lube onto the actual bell surface there. That could be a problem. So make sure if you WD it, you do it really light, or you use some of your bearing oil, you do it really light. Okay, now the sensor, I'll just show you. It just goes right there like that, and when it rotates right there, the bearing is close to that sensor, and that's what gives you your signal. So that's how it works. Okay, so when installing your flywheel telemetry, you're going to have your yellow wire on the inside on the top, it'll still ground through the screw. When it tightens down, you're going to want to put another screw there, and then you just take your motor and slide these in here like this, okay, and get them started. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. And that's how those will go on. Okay. Now, what you want to do is work everything in here. You're going to have the issue with your I'm not sure, like I said, I took it apart without messing with my throttle. I'm hoping, yeah, there we go. It's in. Okay, so everything's in, it's lined up, and I didn't have to take any of this stuff apart over here. So you'll see my throttle linkages are all still there. Never messed with them, and it's lined up. My wires are all lined up. And now all I got to do is tighten those two screws down in there. So, as you can see, my exhaust was still on. All I had to do is slide it off. So, it's in now. I just bolted up all the bolts and the other bolts, and I'll come back. Alright.